Ladies and gentlemen, imagine waking up one day to find the last tree has fallen, the last river has dried, and the last breath you take tastes like smoke. Would you wish you had done something differently? The clock is ticking, and each second that passes is a reminder that we are living on borrowed time. The urgency is not an exaggeration. It is the undeniable truth staring us in the face. Every year, the seasons feel less like the steady cycle they once were and more like warnings etched into weather patterns. Storms grow stronger, summers become hotter, winters less predictable, and the balance that sustained life for centuries is tilting dangerously. It is not some distant threat lurking hundreds of years away. It is happening right now, before our very eyes. We read about glaciers melting, yet they continue to disappear faster than predicted. We watch wildfires consuming entire forests, yet still choose to carry on as if nothing is wrong. We see oceans swallowing coastlines, yet we ignore the creeping danger until it reaches our own doorstep. The problem is not that we don't know, it's that we refuse to act with the urgency this moment demands. This is not just about environmental statistics or climate charts. It is about life itself. The soil that feeds us is losing its nutrients. The rivers that quench our thirst are drying or becoming poisoned. The air that fills our lungs grows heavier with toxins each passing day. When nature suffers, so do we. And the warning signs are no longer whispers, they are screams. Scientists have been sounding alarms for decades, but alarms only matter if we listen before the fire consumes the house. The sad reality is that our planet has been treated like a limitless resource, a bottomless well we could draw from without consequence, but the well is running dry. Every resource we take without replenishing, every habitat we destroy without restoring, every ecosystem we damage without healing pushes us closer to a point where recovery will no longer be possible. This urgency is not only about saving the environment, it is about saving ourselves. The Earth will adapt in ways we might not survive. Species will vanish, weather will become increasingly extreme, and food and water shortages will ripple through societies, igniting conflict and displacement. Our children and grandchildren will inherit not the comfortable, thriving world we enjoy today, but one filled with scarcity and struggle. And when that time comes, they will look back at this generation and ask why we did not act when we still had the chance. We stand at a crossroads where every choice counts, and inaction is a choice with devastating consequences. This is why every small effort matters, because time is the one resource we cannot recycle, and every second wasted is a second we cannot get back. We cannot hide from the truth that the damage we have done to this planet is both deep and deliberate. For decades, we have cut down forests not just to survive, but to satisfy endless demands for more. More buildings, more roads, more space for things we could have lived without. We have poured plastic into oceans until they became graveyards for marine life, all for the sake of convenience. Rivers that once ran clear are now clogged with chemicals from industries chasing profit over protection. The air that was meant to give us life has been filled with fumes that slowly take it away. These are not accidents of progress, they are choices we made, knowingly and repeatedly. We saw what our actions were doing, yet we kept going. convincing ourselves that nature would somehow heal itself faster than we could harm it. Every tree felled, every coral reef bleached, every wetland drained is a page torn from the story of life on Earth. The tragedy is that we have treated these losses as the price of development instead of the warning signs they are. The truth is we traded priceless natural wonders for temporary gains, exchanging biodiversity for profit margins, ecosystems for industry, and stability for greed. We acted as if our actions existed in isolation, forgetting that the destruction of one part of the planet's web weakens the whole. When the forests fall, the rains change. When the oceans warm, the storms grow fierce. When the ice melts, the seas rise. Every choice to harm one part of the earth sets off a chain reaction that will eventually reach us, no matter how far we think we are from the source. The most painful part is that the victims of this harm are not just distant landscapes or unseen species. They are future generations who have no voice in the decisions we make today. They are the children who will grow up breathing polluted air, drinking unsafe water, and facing shortages of food we once had in abundance. They are the people who will never know the joy of walking through a forest alive with birdsong or diving into a coral reef bursting with color. They will inherit not the richness of the earth as it was meant to be, but the scraps of what we left behind. And when they ask how this happened, the answer will be that we saw the harm and looked away. We excused ourselves by calling it progress, but true progress should leave things better than we found them, not stripped bare and gasping for life. The harm we have caused cannot be undone with words alone. It demands a transformation in how we live, consume, and value the only home we have. It is easy to point fingers at corporations, governments, and industries, blaming them for the destruction of the planet. But the truth is much harder to accept. This crisis is not built by them alone. It is built by all of us, brick by brick, choice by choice, every product we buy without questioning where it came from. Every moment we stay silent when something wrong is happening, every convenience we choose over conscience is another thread pulled from the fabric of our planet's survival. We like to imagine that real change is the responsibility of those in power, but power is not only in parliaments and boardrooms. It exists in our wallets, in our voices, in our daily decisions. If we all waited for someone else to fix things, nothing would ever change, because change is not a spectator sport. The coffee we drink in the morning, the clothes we wear, the energy that lights our homes, all of these come from somewhere, and each has a cost. When we waste food, we waste the water, soil, and labor that went into producing it. When we throw away plastic without recycling, it doesn't vanish, it lingers for centuries. No, those were finding its way into the stomachs of animals and the depths of the ocean. When we buy from companies that harm the environment but do nothing to change, we are funding the very destruction we condemn. It is not about feeling guilty for existing. It is about being awake enough to see that our daily actions matter. We often tell ourselves that we are just one person, and one person cannot make a difference. But one person becomes two, two becomes 10 becomes thousands, and thousands become a movement. Social change has never started with the comfortable majority. It has always begun with individuals who refuse to accept the way things were. If one person can destroy a forest by starting a single fire, then one person can plant a tree that grows into a forest of its own. The same energy that causes harm can be redirected toward healing. We are not powerless, but we often act as if we are. We wait for laws to change without realizing that laws change when people demand them to. We hope companies will be ethical without understanding that companies change when their customers demand it. Every action we take sends a message about what we value. And if enough of us send the same message, it becomes impossible to ignore. The responsibility for the future is not resting on someone else's shoulders. It is on all of ours, right now, in this moment. The world will not be saved by a single leader or a single organization. It will be saved when each person sees themselves as a leader in their own sphere of influence and acts accordingly. For generations, we lived as though the Earth's resources were infinite, as if there would always be more trees to cut, more water to draw, more fertile soil to plant in, and more clean air to breathe. We took without asking, without thinking about the limits of what the planet could give, believing that nature would endlessly replenish itself. But now the truth stands before us, undeniable and unforgiving. Nature's gifts are not bottomless. The forests that once stretched endlessly are vanishing at alarming rates. Ancient woodlands, home to species that existed long before us, are reduced to stumps and barren ground. Rivers that once flowed strong enough to shape landscapes now trickle, poisoned or dried, unable to sustain the life that once depended on them. The soil, once rich and full of life, is being stripped of its nutrients, turning into dust under the weight of overfarming and chemical abuse. We once thought the ice caps were eternal, but now they melt faster than scientists ever predicted, feeding oceans that creep higher each year. This rising water swallows coastlines and forces communities to abandon the places they have called home for centuries. Those were coral reefs, the vibrant underwater cities of the ocean, are bleaching into ghostly white tombs, unable to survive in waters that are too warm and too acidic. Every part of the planet is sending the same message. There is only so much we can take before there is nothing left to give. The loss is not gradual anymore. It is rapid, visible, and relentless. Species are disappearing at rates that rival the planet's greatest extinctions. Yet many vanish without a name, without anyone even noticing they were here. When an animal disappears, it is not just the loss of a creature. It is the collapse of an entire relationship within the ecosystem. A thread pulled that unravels the whole tapestry. We fail to see how deeply connected everything is until the chain begins to break and the consequences reach us directly. The shortage of pollinators affects crops. The warming seas affect fishing communities. The loss of forests affects the air we breathe and the rain we depend on. These are not abstract problems for some distant future. They are the reality we are already facing. Every year we delay action, the damage grows harder to reverse. Some of what is lost will never return, no matter how hard we try. The lesson we must learn, and learn quickly, is that we cannot live as though resources will always be there simply because they always have been. The time of taking without giving back is over. The Earth's balance is fragile, and once it tips too far, it will not be able to restore itself in our lifetime or in the lifetime of those who come after us. For too long, humanity has acted under the illusion that the Earth's resources are endless. As if the forests would forever grow back, the rivers would forever flow, the soil would forever remain fertile, and the skies would forever stay clean. This illusion has fueled reckless consumption, where taking became second nature and giving back became an afterthought. But the reality we face today is stark and undeniable. Nature is not infinite. The forests that once stood tall and proud are falling faster than they can regenerate, leaving behind empty landscapes where birds no longer sing and wildlife no longer roams. The great rivers that sustained civilizations for centuries are drying up or being poisoned, their waters no longer safe to drink. The land, once alive with nutrients and vitality, is being stripped bare by overuse and pollution until it turns to lifeless dust. The ice that has stood for millennia at the poles is melting at unprecedented rates, causing seas to swell and swallow the edges of nations. Islands and coastal cities are already losing ground, their people forced to leave the homes where generations before them had lived and thrived. Coral reefs, which once teemed with colors and life, are bleaching and dying, unable to withstand the heat and acidity of the oceans. Each of these losses is a warning sign, a signal that the limits of the planet's ability to sustain us are being pushed beyond repair. What makes this crisis even more alarming is the speed at which it unfolds. The changes that once took centuries are now happening in decades, sometimes even years. Species are disappearing at rates so fast that scientists struggle to document them before they are gone forever. Each loss sends a ripple through the delicate web of life, unraveling connections that took millions of years to form. When a single species vanishes, it affects countless others that depended on it, and eventually it affects us. The food we eat, the air we breathe, the climate we live in, all are linked to these systems we are dismantling. We are not separate from nature. We are part of it. The idea that we can keep taking without consequences has brought us to the edge of a dangerous cliff. Every tree cut down without replanting, every body of water polluted without cleaning, every patch of land exhausted without restoration pushes us closer to a point where recovery will no longer be possible. Some of the damage we have caused is already irreversible, and more will follow if we continue to ignore the limits of the Earth's generosity. The truth is that our survival depends on recognizing these limits and respecting them before the balance is broken beyond what our world can endure. Children are not asking for skyscrapers, smartphones, or luxury. They are asking for something far simpler and far more precious. Clean air to breathe, safe water to drink, and a living earth that can nurture them as it has nurtured us. They do not need towering monuments of steel and glass if the price is poisoned rivers and silent forests. What they dream of is a world where they can run barefoot on grass that is green and alive, where they can watch the sunset behind hills that are not choked in smog, where rain falls without carrying toxins, and where oceans are not filled with the waste of generations before them. Their wishes are not extravagant. They are fundamental to survival, yet even these basics are becoming harder to promise with each passing year. The air that surrounds us should be a gift, invisible yet vital, filling our lungs with life. But in too many places, that air is thick with smoke, dust, and chemicals that harm the bodies of the youngest and most vulnerable. Water, which should be the most accessible and natural resource, is becoming a commodity, sold in bottles and guarded behind gates, while rivers and lakes shrink, their surfaces reflecting a sky clouded by human carelessness. Forests, which once offered both food and shelter to countless species, are now reduced to scattered fragments, leaving children with stories of wildlife they will never see outside of pictures or screens. These are not luxuries they are being denied. They are rights that every human should have from birth. Yet, with every factory built without proper safeguards, every patch of land cleared without replanting, and every ton of waste dumped without thought, we strip away those rights from the very people who will inherit the consequences. Children today are already growing up with asthma caused by polluted air, with illnesses from contaminated water, and with fewer opportunities to connect with the natural world because so much of it is gone. And as the environment degrades, so too does the hope for a future where they can live healthy, free, and unafraid of the basics running out. When a child looks to the ocean, they should see waves and life, not plastic floating on the surface. When they step outside, they should smell rain and earth, not smoke and exhaust. When they ask us about the future, they should hear promises of possibility, not warnings of scarcity. Yet, the reality we are creating tells a different story, one in which their dreams are exchanged for our convenience. The greatest tragedy is not that we failed to give them more than we had. It is that we are taking away what we once enjoyed without ever asking if they agreed to pay the price. Future generations will not measure our success by the size of our buildings, the power of our machines, or the complexity of our technology. They will measure it by the condition of the world we leave behind, no matter how advanced our inventions become. They will mean little if the air is unbreathable, the water is undrinkable, and the land is barren. History remembers civilizations not just for their achievements, but for how they cared for the foundations of life itself. If we allow environmental destruction to define our era, that is the legacy they will inherit. They will not remember the comfort of our devices or the speed of our transportation as fondly as they will remember the day the forests fell silent, the coral reefs turned to stone, and the rivers ran dry. The danger is that we are so focused on what we can create that we are blind to what we are destroying. We marvel at new cities rising, but fail to see the forests that fell to make room for them. We celebrate economic growth without counting the cost paid by the Earth's ecosystems. We take pride in human innovation, but ignore the damage caused by our inability to live within nature's limits. Progress without preservation is nothing more than a path to self-destruction, and the generations that follow us will be the ones forced to walk it. When they look back, they will ask not how fast our internet was, but how quickly we responded when the planet cried out for help. They will wonder why we ignored the warnings of scientists, activists, and even nature itself as storms grew fiercer. Fires spread wider, and seasons shifted beyond recognition. They will question how we could have had the knowledge, the resources, and the opportunity to change course, yet chose the comfort of convenience over the courage of responsibility. They will see clearly what we refuse to admit. that no invention can replace clean water. No machine can replicate the complexity of a thriving forest. And no technology can fully restore what is lost once it is gone. The legacy we leave will not be defined by our intentions, but by our actions. If we choose to protect and restore the earth, they will inherit a planet capable of sustaining life for centuries to come. If we continue to consume without care, they will inherit a struggle for survival in a world stripped of abundance. Every decision we make today, from the smallest habit to the largest policy, is a message to those yet to be born. That message will either be one of hope and gratitude or one of regret and blame. And once written, it cannot be erased. The need for action is no longer a distant call for future generations to answer. It is an immediate demand for this generation to face. Every delay deepens the damage. Every moment of hesitation closes the window of opportunity a little more. The changes happening to our planet are not slow enough for us to wait and decide later. They are accelerating right now, unfolding before our eyes. Forests are disappearing in a matter of days. Species are vanishing without a chance for recovery, and climate patterns are shifting in ways that disrupt lives across the globe. The choice to act cannot be postponed because nature does not operate on our schedule. Once a glacier melts, it does not reform in a decade. Once a species disappears, it does not return when it becomes convenient for us. Time is the one resource we cannot manufacture or buy back, and it is slipping away faster than we are willing to admit. Every crisis we ignore today will return tomorrow as a greater challenge, one that demands far more effort, resources, and sacrifice to address. A polluted river does not clean itself without intervention. It becomes more toxic, requiring more drastic measures. A degraded forest does not simply regrow to its former richness. It takes decades, even centuries, to restore. The longer we wait, the harder and more expensive the solutions become. And in some cases, there may be no solutions at all. This is why later is not an option, because later may be too late. Immediate action means more than grand speeches or ambitious promises. It means tangible, measurable steps taken without delay. It means governments enforcing environmental protections now, not after endless debates. It means industries adopting sustainable practices today, not in some vague future plan. It means individuals making conscious choices in their daily lives, understanding that even the smallest changes multiply into significant impact when embraced by millions. Every tree planted, every piece of plastic avoided, every decision to conserve rather than consume is a strike in favor of survival. Waiting for the perfect solution or the perfect time is a form of surrender. There will never be a moment when it feels entirely safe or convenient to act. The conditions will never be ideal, and the challenges will never vanish before we begin. The only way to protect the future is to act in the present, to treat this moment as the turning point it needs to be. If we can summon the courage to act decisively now, we can still shape a future worth living in. If we fail, our inaction will speak louder than any words we could have offered, and it will be our silence, not just our actions, that will define the legacy we leave behind. For too long, destruction has been disguised as progress, and we have accepted it without question. We have been told that cutting down forests is necessary for development, That polluting rivers is the cost of industry. That exhausting the soil is the price of feeding the world. But the truth is that real progress does not require the destruction of the very systems that sustain life. Shifting our priorities means redefining what success looks like, moving away from the false belief that growth is measured only in profits, buildings, and consumption. True success is when we can meet our needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet theirs, when we can advance as a society without leaving the planet weaker than we found it. This shift begins with a change in mindset. We must value restoration as highly as we value production. See the health of our ecosystems as part of our wealth, and recognize that the quality of life cannot be separated from the quality of our environment. Planting a forest is just as important as building a factory. Cleaning a river is just as valuable as opening a new trade route. Protecting endangered species is as vital as protecting economic stability. These are not opposing goals, they are interconnected. An economy built on a dying planet will eventually collapse, no matter how strong it appears in the short term. Replacing greed with care means considering the consequences of our actions before we take them. It means that businesses must measure success not just by profit margins, but by the sustainability of their practices. Governments must create policies that safeguard the environment even when it requires difficult trade-offs. Communities must organize around solutions that benefit both people and nature. And individuals must take responsibility for their own choices, from the food they eat to the energy they consume. Understanding that each decision is a vote for the kind of world we will have tomorrow. Shifting from short-term comfort to long-term sustainability requires patience and sacrifice, but it also brings rewards that money cannot buy. Clean air, fertile soil, thriving wildlife, and a stable climate are forms of wealth that no economy can replace once they are lost. This is not about returning to the past or rejecting innovation. It is about directing innovation toward healing rather than harm. Technology, policy, and human creativity can work together to create systems that produce abundance without destruction. The future depends on this shift in priorities. If we continue to measure progress only by what we can build, extract, and consume, we will eventually run out of resources to build with, extract from, and consume. But if we measure progress by how much we can restore, protect, and preserve, then every step forward will also be a step towards survival. And the generations to come will inherit not a world in ruins, but a home full of life and possibility. There comes a point when apologies are no longer enough, when words lose their power because they are not followed by action. We have reached that point. For decades, people have been saying sorry to the earth in speeches, campaigns, and promises, yet the destruction has continued. An apology might acknowledge the harm, but it does nothing to stop it unless it is backed by real, measurable change. Saying we care about the planet while continuing to live in ways that harm it is like telling a friend we value them while constantly betraying their trust. If we truly mean what we say, then the proof will be in what we do, not in what we claim. The time for symbolic gestures has passed. Planting a single tree for a photo opportunity means little if deforestation continues on a massive scale. Announcing future climate goals means nothing if immediate steps are not taken to reduce emissions right now. Promising to clean our oceans while producing more plastic waste than ever before is hypocrisy disguised as hope. We cannot keep making pledges for a distant future and expect that to solve problems that are urgent in the present. Change has to be visible, tangible, and consistent if it is to mean anything. Moving from apology to action requires courage, because real change often means disrupting comfortable routines. It means challenging powerful systems that profit from environmental harm. It means admitting that our lifestyles may have to shift in significant ways. Not later, but now. It means turning down what is convenient when it comes at too high a cost to the planet. And it means taking personal responsibility instead of assuming that someone else will fix things for us. This shift also demands that we stop treating environmental protection as a side issue and start seeing it as central to every decision we make. Education, health, business, and politics are all directly affected by the health of our planet. Without clean air, there is no public health. Without fertile soil, there is no food security. Without stable climates, economies cannot function. Every sector of society has a role to play in this transformation, and every individual has the power to push for it. Action is not always about grand, sweeping gestures. It is also about the daily choices that build into larger change. Choosing sustainable products, reducing waste, conserving energy, supporting policies and leaders that prioritize the environment. These actions might seem small, but multiplied by millions of people, they become unstoppable forces. If each of us treats environmental care as a non-negotiable part of life, the combined effect can reshape the future. Words can inspire, but only action can preserve the world our children will inherit. The earth does not need more apologies. It needs proof that we are willing to protect it, even when it requires effort, sacrifice, and persistence. The power to shape the future is not in the hands of a few world leaders or corporations alone. It rests in the hands of every single person alive today. Too often, we underestimate the influence of our choices, telling ourselves that one individual cannot possibly make a difference in the face of global challenges. But history has shown again and again that change always begins with individuals who refuse to accept the way things are. Every movement that transformed the world started with someone deciding that they would not wait for someone else to take the first step. The environment is no different. Every action we take today, no matter how small it may seem, is a seed planted in the soil of tomorrow. When we choose to consume less, we reduce the strain on resources. When we decide to walk or cycle instead of drive, we cut down on emissions. When we support local and sustainable businesses, we send a clear message that we value the planet over profit. Each choice may feel insignificant on its own, but when multiplied across communities, cities, and nations, they become waves of change that cannot be ignored. This is the true power of the present generation. We have numbers, we have knowledge, and we have the ability to act right now. Empowerment comes from realizing that waiting for permission to act is unnecessary. We do not need to hold political office to influence policies. We can do so through petitions, activism, and voting for leaders who prioritize environmental stewardship. We do not need to own a company to change industry practices. We can influence them by choosing where we spend our money and by holding them accountable for their impact. We do not need to be scientists to educate others. We can share information, raise awareness, and inspire those around us to care. The ripple effect of informed and determined individuals is more powerful than most people realize. The responsibility is heavy, but it is also an opportunity unlike any other. We are living in a moment where our actions can still reverse some of the damage done. We can restore forests, revive polluted rivers, protect endangered species, and create systems of energy and food production that work in harmony with nature. We can leave behind not just technology and infrastructure, but a thriving, healthy planet that future generations can call home. This power is not something that should be feared. It should be embraced. It is a reminder that we are not helpless witnesses to environmental decline. We are active participants in the story of our planet. The ending of that story has not yet been written, and it will be defined by the decisions we make today. If we choose wisely, with courage and commitment, the generations that come after us will inherit not just a planet that survived, but one that flourished because we chose to protect it while we still had the chance.